Hey, Al McCoy here, and you are listening to the Solar Panel, the Phoenix Suns Show.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for logging on or listening to or whatever you're doing on the Solar Panel. We are here without Tim Tompkins this week. It's just going to be Greg and I. And Greg, though, is for some reason looking a lot like Jonah Hill. Tell us why.
Because I lost your stupid bet and I'm paying it off on the show for you. I'll take a step back so the YouTube video viewers can actually see the whole thing. So,
all right, for those not paying attention, you've got, you've got Greg dressed just like Jonah Hill in that one random picture. I'll be sure to get a picture of this so that I can post it next to the Jonah Hill one, and we'll see how close you got.
Yeah, I even wearing the business pants, same black jersey, ill-fitting just like Jonah's.
I don't see the arm ink though. You were supposed to get henna tattoos just to make that.
I wasn't going that far. Sorry. You're lucky I'm humiliating myself this much.
It's too bad this isn't like a Renaissance Fair time, because you could have gone down there and had them put henna tattoos all over your arms.
It's like 10 minutes from my house too, so I
if
could have.
If it was running.
It is. I just didn't care that much to pay off the bet that well for you.
Oh. Now I feel jilted.
You should.
I feel
per usual.
I feel like you almost didn't take it as serious as the Suns didn't take it seriously to win some games either.
Hey, at least I showed up. Justin, our friend, couldn't even show up to pay off his part of the bet. So
Justin was supposed to be dressed in pink curtains.
Yes, if you remember, I was giving him a hard time about the curtains behind him. We were both so sure that the Suns wouldn't win 5 more games this season when we recorded that episode. We both said we'd humiliate ourselves if they did, and we were close.
This was back. You were close. This was back when the Suns had only 11 wins on the season after, I don't know, about 60 games or so, and you guys bet that there was no way. I said they would win at least 5 more games. You guys said no way. So you lost your bet. The Suns did win 5 instead. And in fact, they won 6 games. And then they decided to rest everybody who helped win those games. And now they're going to lose out the season probably.
Yep.
Let's have a new bet. There's 8 games left.
I can't humiliate myself any further than
no,
this.
There's
so
8
why
games
not?
left. It looks like they're probably going to wait out the rest of the season. TJ Warren might get 1 or 2 games so he can get his 5 3-point attempts and get his bonus. So I feel like he's just going to show up for 1 or 2 games. I feel like if people can be signed off the street to 10 days at the end of the year and stuff like that, why can't TJ Warren come back and play okay if he's getting better on his ankle? Tyler Johnson is walking around with no knee brace, nothing to hold his knee together or anything like that, but he's been out for 2 weeks. Kelly Oubre, they already put under the knife for his thumb sprain. And who else is missing? Oh yeah, Josh Jackson had a really nasty fall on his ankle, and he's out. So now the Suns basically have 5 rookies around Devin Booker, a guy from China, and a guy who probably should have retired this past offseason. That's what's in his rotation. So given that, how many out of these last 8 games? Let me tell you who they're playing, Greg. So I don't want you to just punt this without even thinking about who they're playing over these last 8 games. And I want you to tell me how many you think they're going to win.
All right. We can play this game.
We'll go 1 game at a time. So we have Monday. They're going to be at Utah.
Loss.
Wednesday, they host the Wizards with Trevor Ariza.
I'm going to give them a win against the Wizards.
All right. Okay. A win against the Wizards. Okay. You've got Saturday then, home against Memphis.
Loss. They've always struggled with Memphis, so even when they weren't bad. So I'm gonna go loss.
All right. Then you've got April Fool's Day, Monday, April Fool's Day, hosting the Cavaliers, who are right there fighting for that bottom three record in the league.
Well, because we're Suns fans and we understand how this goes, they're gonna get a win against the Cavs because it's the least convenient thing that you could do.
And then, gosh, another game against the Jazz, Wednesday, April 3rd.
Loss.
Okay. Then Friday, April 5th against the New Orleans Pelicans.
Uh,
They're out Drew
Loss.
Holiday now. They're probably going to stop playing Anthony Davis at some point very soon.
Yeah, but they still want to make up for that insane way the Suns won a few weeks ago. So I'm
That
going to
was
give the
unbelievable how the Suns won.
yeah, I'm going to give it to the Pelicans because of just the revenge factor on that one. So I think I have them down for 2 wins so far.
So
Wizards
far,
and
you have 2
Cavs.
wins. Yep. And then they're at Houston
Big loss.
and they're at Dallas.
Loss, but I think DeAndre Ayton has a monster game because he wants to prove himself against
Luka.
Doncic. Yeah, so we'll get something special from DeAndre if they haven't already benched him, and and that'll be that. They'll lose still.
So you have the Suns with 2 more wins.
Yes.
That would put them at 19 wins on the season. Okay.
Which is still putrid, and yet somehow we'll feel better about them than we did at the end of last year.
So before this past week, the last episode, I thought the Suns were going to challenge to beat last year's win total of 21. Greg has them finishing 2-6 to finish with 19 wins. I'll put them, you know what? I think they're going to have 3 wins in there. I don't know which 3. I think it'll be a different 3 than either of us could pick. But I think it'll be 3 wins because there's just some winnable games. I mean, my gosh. You've got home against the Wizards who are playing out the season. You got Memphis who knows what kind of – it could be a 20-point loss. It could be a 20-point win. You've got the game against Cleveland. Same thing. Could be a 20-point loss. Could be a 20-point win. Obviously, Utah is not going to be – because they're fighting for every seed. It's crazy. They could finish with a 4th seed or a 9th seed, Utah. Not 9. I think all the top 8 are pretty well set in the West. So, but you don't want to be the team who has to play a 1st or 2nd seed. So they're going to be fighting for final position. New Orleans, who knows who they're going to play, who knows how what's going to happen. Houston also fighting for that same thing, just like Utah. And then Dallas just playing out that final game of the season. So it'll be just like starting the season where nobody expects anything from either team, and it's just the Doncic against Ayton show, and we'll see what happens there. So I think they're going to get 3 wins out of that. It just feels like they are. They'll get to 20. They'll get out of the teens, but they're not going to beat last year's record.
At this point, I don't see how they get to 3. I mean, yeah, they could have a great game, but I don't see them bringing back TJ Warren for any reason, nor do I see his agent wanting him to come back. And if I'm the Suns, I say to him point blank, we're giving you that money. Like the 5 attempts.
You can't give him the money. What do you mean just give him the money?
Give him the bonus?
I don't think you can.
I think you can do anything you want because you're the ones that control the purse string. So if you want to say, we're giving you that money because you would have qualified for it, and we're not going to have you come back and potentially injure yourself, long term because you're going to force yourself back to chuck up 5 3-pointers. You can make that happen. There's no rule that says,
But what has TJ done for Robert Sarver that would make him want to give him money? I mean, Robert Sarver only gives away free money to people who give him something back.
That's not true. He gave away one time $10,000 to anybody that could hit a half-court shot during an all-employee meeting randomly. So if he's just feeling
Did anybody
generous,
hit the shot?
Two people actually hit the shot, if I remember correctly.
So
I
he
was
gave
not
away
one of them.
$20,000 that
Yeah,
day.
on a whim. So if you catch him in the right mood, I'm pretty sure that's how Ryan McDonough got his second contract extension, was on a whim like that too. So if
Oh,
you
that was
catch him in
because
the
he
right
felt bad
mood,
about the goat shit.
yeah, well, no, that's one thing I can tell you. Robert Sarver's never felt bad about anything, but he will be generous
On
from time to
occasion.
time. So if TJ catches him in the right mood, I'd certainly do that. And if your plans to deal him, the last thing you want is for him to come out and severely injure himself because he's trying to just get 5 3-pointers hoisted up there, So that's what I do. I don't expect to see him back at all.
But
Which
don't you think now this is, of course, I don't want TJ to get hurt further either. But don't you think he could move even better than Dirk Nowitzki, who 40 years old and actually made 5 of 8 threes in one game last Saturday night against Golden State?
Yeah, but Dirk's old age. I mean, that's different. That's not.
Well, it feels like
Like,
he could break a hip pretty easily.
well, he could, but he's accepted that, and he's retiring, so the Mavs don't care if he breaks his hip. There's no value in trading a guy that's retired. So, yeah, and I'm like we talked about before. I'm sure that the Suns are probably covering for something more bizarre that's going on with TJ, or that did go on with TJ, and that's why he's been out so long. So I don't see him coming back, which probably means he'll play in all these final games because I just said that out loud, but I don't see the benefit of it right away. And if you look at this roster, it's Booker, Aiton, Bridges, and a bunch of nothing really right
Well,
now.
like I said, it's you got Booker, you have literally five rookies who will play in every game from here on out. You it's possible he'll rotate out Elia Kobo for Jamal Crawford, who that's just a funny little trade off of games right there because Crawford just turned 39 this week, and Elia Kobo is 21. So I mean, Crawford could easily be half this roster's father, in in a regular situation, not even early pregnancy or anything like that. So Jamal Crawford and trading off with Elia Kobo, but like Saturday night against the Kings, the Suns played five rookies.
Yeah,
DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, D'Anthony, three of them second rounders. I think Ray Spalding was a second rounder. Three of them second rounders, and Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton, their first year in the NBA as rookies, even though they were first rounders. It's just crazy to think you could actually that this was a good roster to put together. I mean, I'm still looking back on this. I'm still going, how is it that Ryan McDonough thought this was a roster that could turn the corner a little bit and actually win some games?
well, you're acting as if the fact that they're playing five rookies in this final stretch like it's some shock. I mean, they've played four of them major minutes all year. I
Oh,
mean,
I
so
know. It's just now I get it, but I guess I'm just frustrated. I was getting excited by them actually playing regular NBA players with Tyler Johnson and Kelly Oubre, and hoping TJ Warren might come back and finishing the season the right way, as Devin Booker put it. And I guess I'm just a little bit frustrated
hey,
that we're right back where we started, which is a terrible, not a terribly young rotation who just cannot be expected to play consistently for 48 minutes.
well, like Bane said in The Dark Knight Rises, without hope, there's no true despair. And I think that sums up the last 5 years here. Is there's been some glimmer of hope in each of these seasons, however small it is, and then that despair comes back pretty quick, and that's where we're sitting. This is exactly like that win streak in December as well. You see a little bit of something, your hopes get up, and then the losing comes back. And This time, okay, it's acceptable. You understand it because Kelly Oubre and Tyler Johnson were two of the big reasons why the Suns were starting to win because they brought a tenacity, they brought an attitude. It changed things because the rotation became more of an actual NBA rotation. Without those two guys, you see that they revert back to the same team that we saw before. And I think if there was any doubt in the fact that the Suns needed to re-sign Kelly Oubre, since he's been out, that doubt should have been washed away completely. They should most certainly re-sign him because he has brought an energy, an attitude, and a passion that this roster lacks without him.
I really like the way Kelly Oubre plays because he plays with a ferocity and a constant high motor that really is effective, even though his game is somewhat limited. He's not a great shooter. He's not a great rebounder. He's not a good passer at all. But he plays hard-nosed defense and he makes scoring happen when the Suns need it. He scores when the Suns need it, and that's really important. Part of this, I wonder, is would any player in their athletic peak look good on this team? In their NBA prime, look good on this team because Tyler Johnson looked even like a difference maker.
No, but the thing is, with Oubre in particular, he's one of those guys that it's infectious, right? What he does, what he brings to the court, changes those around him, and that's not a quality that everybody has. I mean, take T.J. Warren for example. T.J. can get his, he can score, but he's never been a guy that moves the needle with the rest of his team. He's low energy. He's not a guy that's going to bring passion. He's not going to fire you up. He's not going to do the things on the defensive end that are going to get your teammates involved. What makes Kelly Oubre look good on this roster is it's the fact that the Suns have been missing guys like that since they got rid of PJ Tucker. And you need guys like that on a roster if you want to compete. And that's why I would pay a premium for Kelly Oubre because he brings that. And as much as I stand for Ryan McDonough and I like Ryan McDonough the man, I think he missed that part in putting together rosters was there's this human element, this thing that you can't quantify necessarily with numbers or even with the eye test sometimes until you see it in a prolonged period with guys in a specific locker room. And Kelly Oubre does something to galvanize these guys, and that's what you need more of, and what you usually lack when you have an extremely young roster like the Suns have had.
Yeah, that's true. His attitude is infectious. They do get along. He's willing to even come up with nicknames and stuff for the guys. So I think that's pretty good. Definitely, I think he'd be a very good teammate to bring back, and he should be considered one of the Suns' best players going into next season. I definitely agree with that. I just part of me is just wondering. I mean, would anybody have looked really good? But you're right. The things that actually Kelly Oubre brought to the table of teamwork and making the guys around him play better, helping the guys around him play better, coming up in big moments, making shots when they needed to make them, was really helpful. And with Tyler Johnson is really helpful having somebody who just didn't make turnovers at the point guard spot and actually got these guys into position to score. And he's not a gifted passer by any means, but he's also not a bad passer and he's not a turnover machine. So Tyler Johnson, just by being a competent player, which is what we've been saying all year long, what we said even in October, in September, and then into November, December, and all that was all you need is somebody who's not going to make dumb mistakes out there at point guarding. And Tyler Johnson is the epitome of that guy. He didn't shoot well when he was in the lineup for the Suns. He didn't pass that well. He had averaged maybe 4 assists a game in 30 minutes, which isn't great for a point guard. But he just didn't turn the ball over, and he didn't make dumb plays. He didn't have backcourt turnovers. He didn't have situations where he put guys in a bad position to score and forced them to try to score with 2 seconds left on the clock. And all of a sudden, the Suns were a competitive team. So it's just sad to see now toward this last 8-10 games of the season how unlikely it is that the Suns are going to see competent point guard play again for the rest of this season.
Well, then Tyler Johnson, I think, is more of he looked good because of what he was compared against, right? I don't think Tyler Johnson is the answer the way Kelly Oubre could be the answer for certain elements for this team moving forward. I think Tyler Johnson is like the person that you hook up with when you're lonely. It beats having nobody, but it probably isn't who you want to be with long term. I think that's what we're looking at
Hey,
with Tyler Johnson.
I think it's just a big credit that we're not calling him Mose. I mean, that we have enough respect for him that we're not going to cut him down at every chance we have.
Hey, he's not a shrew, all right. So yeah, so I was more surprised by Tyler Johnson than I thought I was going to be. I mean, I was the one calling him over and giving him
Or for Johnson.
crap early on, but he did help stabilize things. But I think he's more of a mirage than Oubre will be. And honestly, I have no problem with them shutting down Kelly Oubre. I know you think it's a sign of tanking. A lot of people do. For me, as long as they had the discussion with him and said, "Look, we want you here long term, and we want you to be part of this franchise, and we're prepared to make that happen in the offseason. But we want to ensure that this thumb does not become a long term problem. So let's just get it taken care of now." I think that's smart business if they did that. Now, the chances that they actually did that, probably 25% yes, 75% no, with the history of communication the organization has had. But if I were thinking long term, that's what I would have done with him, because the last thing you need is some minor thumb injury to turn into some major thing with 10 games left in a meaningless season, and then you potentially screw up a long-term investment as well.
Well, yeah, of course. I don't want to have any long-term investments either. Excuse me. I don't want to screw up any long-term investments either. If they're going to give him a long-term contract, and you're ruining his thumb on his shooting hand, I get that, but I just feel like it's just frustrating, right? We're 4 seasons in now to surprisingly long, extended, somewhat minor injuries that that guys would be able to play through if the games actually meant something.
Well, you know who, if I'm him, this bothers me the most is Aaron Nelson, and that training staff, because think about that hurts your reputation as a training staff. I mean,
Yeah.
it looks bad. I mean, most of the league, I think, understands the reality of the situation, but I mean, that's tough because you go from one of the most vaunted training staffs to a group that now, a bunch of your players miss extended time for mysterious things that nobody can answer. I think that's difficult for them, but I don't. I'm in the minority here, I think, but I don't care at this point if they tank, because the reality is winning a handful more games the end of this season isn't going to mean anything going into next year, and isn't going to mean anything, overall. So you might as well make sure that you're solidified in that top three to have a shot at what is a two-player draft. That's if we've had to suffer through all this losing anyways this year. If there's not something at the end of that tunnel, and we just climb through that sewer drain to realize we're still stuck in the prison instead of actually making it out, I'm okay with losing a little bit more the rest of the way to ensure that and it's not as blatant as when they shut down Eric Bledsoe. It's not like
Well,
they went to.
that's the thing you have to avoid, right? You have to make sure you avoid pissing off Devin Booker to the point where not that he's not going to demand a trade. He's not. He's going to be in his first year of his max extension. He'll at worst case, the worst possible case, in my opinion, the worst possible case will be Anthony Davis, where he waits 3 years or 4 years into this extension and then demands a trade. So I'm not saying that Devin Booker would have any outcome this year that where he would demand a trade. He's got no agent issues with trying to get him an extension. He's got no reason business wise to force any kind of issue of leaving the team like Eric Bledsoe was in. And he's not being sat down. Like Eric Bledsoe was actually asked to not play when he was healthy. No one's asking Devin Booker to do that too. But you are asking Devin Booker to play with 5 rookies and a couple of guys five rookies and 3 guys who probably won't even be in the league next year. Jamal Crawford, Jimmer Fredette, and Dragan Bender. It's very likely those guys are not going to be in the league next year. I mean, Bender probably will sign on with somebody, I guess. He's 21 years old, obviously, he's 7 foot. But it'll be a late signing. It won't be like early days of free agency signing, that's for sure. He's not even nearly as good as Alex Len, and Alex Len took until late July to sign a 2-year contract with Atlanta. So you've got 3 guys who wouldn't be in any other team's rotation, 5 rookies, 3 of which wouldn't be in any other team's rotation. The second most reliable, consistent player right now in the rotation is Richaun Holmes. And Richaun Holmes is a 20-minute a game off the bench guy who Greg has already said he wouldn't re-sign.
To huge money. God,
no, I know.
God,
you wouldn't give him huge money,
that.
but definitely you'd bring him back for sure. And he's a guy who deserves 15, 20 minutes or maybe even more. But there's not one non-rookie on this roster besides Devin Booker who deserves 20-plus minutes on another team's rotation right now.
Look, I understand Devin Booker's early season frustration, and when you look at it and you go, "Crap, this was almost built to fail." I mean, I don't think anybody built this roster, whether it was Ryan McDonough going into the season or James Jones after he took it over, going, "Man, we really want to lose. We want to be the worst team in the NBA." Like, it wasn't purposely built to fail.
Tell me what's worse, a roster that's not purposely built to fail or a roster that's built to fail? I mean, to me, a roster not purposely built to fail that actually fails miserably is worse, because that means that there's no redeeming qualities in that front office right now.
Oh, I don't disagree, and that's why Ryan McDonough. Well, that's not why Ryan McDonough doesn't have a job.
That's why he deserved not to have a job.
Yeah, that's why it was tough to make the argument that he should that firing him wasn't. Right. Yeah, but James Jones has made a few nice moves, but hasn't fixed the issue necessarily. I'm not sure he even wants to in the long run. So yeah, it's worse that you built something not intending for it to fail. But my point was, I understand Devin Booker's early season frustration, but by this point, if I'm him, I have to understand the realities of it, and understand, okay, they didn't fake a Kelly Oubre injury. The thumb was legitimately injured and needed surgery. They may have expedited the timetable in which he needed it, because if they were fighting for a playoff spot, he'd probably still be playing. But if I look at it right now and I'm Devin Booker, I go, getting Zion or Ja Morant, or at least having one of those 2 picks to be able to trade it because one of those guys is available is much more beneficial to me long term than getting a handful of wins here at the end of the season. And I think he's smart enough to get that. Where he's going to be frustrated is if they go into next season and the prognosis and the outlook isn't any better. If they haven't surrounded him with more talent and more, not just draft talent, but young veteran, that 25, 28 range kind of player that has been around but is still young. If they don't surround him with those kind of guys, that's when I start worrying that the frustration really sets in. I mean, this year, yes, it's frustrating, but he has $158 million to go rest his head on that he knows, he has in the bank now, and that, okay, we had one more losing season. My patience is completely run out now, but the proof has to come next year going into next season. I don't think these last few games are going to be enough to break Devin Booker mentally with it. But it will add up because it means, okay, he accepts it for the end of this season, but if they go into next season and things don't look any better, it starts to snowball. It becomes an issue, but I don't think the end of the season is enough to push him over the edge.
All right, so let's take a look at the last 13 games. Last 13 games, the Suns are now, I don't know, 6-7, something like that, because they just have that 6 wins in there. Yeah. Uh, the last 3 or 4 of which have been without both Oubre and Tyler Johnson. So if you actually 5, I guess it is, or 6, because there's only okay. Let me straighten out my thoughts here. I'm looking at the Suns' best lineups over the past 13 games. When they started their 6 wins streak here, we're gonna call it a streak, and this is Suns fandom in a nutshell right here. This is only 6 wins in 13 games, but we're gonna call this like a panacea. The highlights of the last couple of seasons here. The Suns' top 6 of the Suns' top 1, 2, 3, 6 lineups of minutes played of 5-man lineups are all net positive, except for the most common one that got the most minutes, 77 minutes over the last 13 games. So here, I guess what I'm saying is here, if the Suns can get the right lineups on the floor, they can win games. But the problem is they haven't been able to get the right lineups in the floor. Over the last 13 games where they have gone 6-7, they haven't had a single 5-man lineup that played together of their top minutes teams. No, they're not a single 5-man lineup that played in more than 8 of those 13 games together for any minutes. And those 2 lineups had alternated. Basically, they were Tyler Johnson, Kelly Oubre, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton. One of those top 3 lineups has Dragan Bender as the 5th. Another has Mikal Bridges as the 5th, and a third has Josh Jackson as the 5th. Which one do you think was the least, Greg? Which one do you think was the least effective as the 5th with Tyler, Kelly, Devin, and DeAndre? Was it Bender? Was it Bridges? Or was it Jackson?
Jackson.
You are actually wrong, my friend.
Wow.
Dragan Bender was a -4 per 36 minutes.
See, that shouldn't have surprised. I thought you were pulling a trick question because the instinct was Bender. Because everybody assumes he's the worst.
I would have guessed Jackson too, because I think Jackson, when I see him out there playing, and God rest his ankle soul, but when I see him out there playing, I kind of wish he wasn't. So I'm a little surprised that they weren't better, but they are a +6 per 36 minutes with Josh Jackson as the 5th, and they are a +25 per 36 minutes with Mikal Bridges as the 5th. And that's 48 minutes of total play. So obviously it's a little bit of a small sample size, but still, over the course of 8 games, they were a +25 per 36 minutes with the 5-man that included a Mikal Bridges.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, Mikal Bridges, even with his limited minutes early in the years, in the top 5 and total steals in the league. I mean, we're not talking rookies. We're talking in the league. And I'm pretty sure since January, or maybe it's the All-Star break, he leads in steals per game. So, it doesn't surprise me that lineups are extremely effective with Mikal Bridges on the floor because he does the little things. He's another guy like Oubre that you may not always see it in the stat sheet, but the little things start to add up. And I'm excited about what they got in Mikal Bridges. Would I prefer Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Probably, because you don't have a point guard. But I would.
I'd rather have Bender myself, and I have to admit I haven't watched enough of Shai, obviously, compared to Mikal. But I will tell you that there are just so many things about Mikal Bridges that are just growing every month. I mean, if you look at Mike Vihill's Twitter account, he is one of the hosts of which one is it? Timeline podcast. He posted like a series of a half a dozen little clips of Mikal Bridges on Saturday night against Sacramento. And the range of skills that he's got offensively that he's just not showing right now because he's not the one of the lead getters of points on the team. And we might see more as the rest of the season plays out since they are playing 5 rookies. But Mikal was showing like an array of different offensive skills that he was not showing earlier in the season. And we've seen the assists. He's getting 3, 4, 5, 7 assists a night, which is really good. He's really good at pocket passes. His only turnovers that he has is when his teammates weren't ready for his pass, and they let it go off their hands or whatever. He's been very impressive, and I feel like he is going to be a really good 3rd or 4th option on a really good team in the very near future. So I'm very excited. I am real excited about Mikal Bridges.
So you're saying he's going to get traded because he's going to be a really good option on a really good team shortly? Because I'm not seeing a really good team anytime soon.
He'll probably end up being a really good 3rd or 4th option on a bad Suns team in the near future.
Okay.
But he could also be a good 3rd or 4th option on a good team. And hopefully the only way we experience that is with the Suns.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I really enjoy the little, I know that should be the title of this episode, the little things, because I just keep bringing that up. But I enjoy watching what he does with that. There's something about the way he plays basketball that's just enjoyable to watch, and we haven't had a lot of that here in Phoenix over the handful of the last few years. But how have we gotten this far into the show without talking about the biggest thing from this past week, that somehow this team manufactured a headline that became a huge deal with Jimmer Fredette coming into the fold? I've never seen something.
Before we talk about Jimmer Fredette, let's do our little break. We're probably going to overdub this with a terrible ad by Greg, if you haven't already heard it.
Yes.
Or maybe it'll be the interjection of the girl who talks us up in a sarcastic way. So that's awesome too. So it's one of those two things that'll happen on this break, and we'll catch you on the other side. All right, we are back, and we are going to talk Jimmer Mania.
Finally.
Finally, we waited 25, 30 minutes into this episode to talk about Jimmer. Now, why did I wait? Because Jimmer is not an NBA player. That's why I waited. Because there should be nothing for us to talk about.
But ESPN and the Twitter sphere and everybody is acting like this is the biggest freaking deal ever.
The Suns social media account themselves had like 8 different Jimmer posts on Friday alone.
When you're wandering through the desert without much to drink, you take anything that comes your way, I guess. Don't like that.
Jimmer Mania. Jimmer Mania.
Yeah, dollar bills, y'all. That's what this is about. It's going to be the remaining home games are just going to simply be about cashing in at the gate, because there's a contingent of fans that follow Jim around. There's a huge BYU contingent here in Arizona, and I guarantee, at least for that first game here when he plays at Talking Stick Resort Arena, there will be a larger crowd than we've seen for majority of the games this year just to see Jimmer. And the funny thing is,
just a couple of Mormon families will be there.
It'll be
the largest crowds of the year, but it only has to have a couple of surnames, right?
Oh, and honestly, they'll come in and they'll get to watch him in warm-ups, and they'll see him for 2.5 minutes, because I don't think Troy Daniels has given up his minutes to this guy. I'm just going to tell you that after how we saw him play against the Kings. I think he's Jimmer who? I don't give a crap. I can shoot 2, and I'm going to prove it to you, and you're not taking my minutes without a fight here.
Imagine the lineups we're going to see over the next week with Jimmer, Daniels, and Booker all out there.
Yeah, well, it's going to be Chuck U. All right.
How long? Okay, how many pregame or how many media sessions will it take for Igor to talk up Jimmer's passing, like his potential to fill in the Tyler Johnson role.
I think Igor's beaten down at this point. I don't think why would at this point why even try that unless you're being forced to? Why nobody's buying that. Nobody, like I also love it's a 2-year deal and people are like, oh, Jimmer's going to be around enough. No, it's a 1-year deal or a
It's a
10-game
10-game deal.
with the option for the team to pick it up, which they are not going to. This is all about just putting some butts in the seats for the final few games, making a few extra dollars around, selling a few jerseys, and so be it. Who the hell cares? You want to line your pockets?
Somehow
Go
he
for
has
it.
transformed into a more well-rounded player. And he approximates the kind of thing that a Tyler Johnson plus Troy Daniels, if you put them together into a single player, if he somehow, the 2% chance that he does that, the Suns have him for almost free next year. If he is anything like the player he has been, the Suns will obviously have plenty of opportunity to let him go because it's a team option. There's no dollars out of their pocket.
Do you really think that a handful of years in the Chinese basketball league, all of a
That's what he
sudden
said.
transformed Jim? Yeah,
He
great.
said he became a more well-rounded player over in China.
What do you want him to say? I went over there to take the money and chuck up shots so I could score 37 a game against inferior talent? Like, no. Of course he's gonna say that. Like, and James Jones is gonna say that about him as well. Like, yeah, no.
Well,
no crap.
The thing that I like about this signing is not that it's Jimmer Fredette. It's just that it's somebody who is probably better than the guys who've been running around the country over the past few months. The Suns have been able to, available to sign to 10-day contracts and stuff like that. He's probably better than a G League guy, and he's now available because the China season ended.
Why is he better than a G League guy? He was a G League guy before he went to Canada. Yeah, he was a G League All-Star. Great. And then he went to China.
It's better
and
than a non-All-Star.
Okay.
He's better than Juwan Evans.
You know what he is? He's a guy with a pulse. And they needed a guy with a pulse to fill a roster spot at this point, and he just happens to be a guy that's going to, like I said, sell some jerseys, put some butts in the seats. That's all this is about. And it almost feels like Ryan McDonough, after he got the call from Robert Sarver letting him know that his services were no longer needed, when he went to clean out his office, he hid some kind of like folder that said roster plan, and inside when you opened it up it said sign only high scoring shooting guards, and like that was like the big plan, and James Jones just stumbled upon it and went, well, let's just follow this, because that seems to be what they've added to this entire group. Kelly Oubre, really a shooting guard that scores. Tyler Johnson, really a shooting guard that scores. Jimmer Fredette, a shooting guard that scores. Oh, and we already had Devin Booker, a shooting guard that scores. Yeah,
that could be. Certainly we wouldn't want like Donatas Moniunas, right? You don't have any clue
care.
what I'm talking about. Okay.
I don't care anymore.
He's a 7-footer who was an NBA player even just a couple of years ago. He's also spent the last 2 years in China. He had a back injury that teams didn't want to touch, but certainly he's obviously healthy now from being in China. And the Spurs signed him.
You don't have to mansplain Moniunas to me. I know who he is. I was just saying what does it matter?
Mansplain.
You could sign me or you to fill at the end of this roster.
No, because he might have been like a power forward option that was better than Ray Spalding. Ray Spalding, I'm sorry, but he's not ready for the NBA.
No, but you got him for 2 years at least, so that's
guaranteed. You can't say you got him for 2 years, but Jimmer Fredette's only for 10 games.
No, people are saying you got Jimmer for 2 years as well, so we're just gonna play that game.
That's what you said.
But honestly, the thing that upsets me about this, it's not the sign Jimmer, make it extra a buck or two. It's the fact that you kind of screwed Troy Daniels, a guy who's been very good to you. Why not just cut him And yeah, total pro, has not complained, has been the soldier, comes in and plays and gives you all effort if you want him to, sits on the bench and is a good teammate if you don't want him in the game. If you were just going to sign a guy to try to take his minutes anyways, why not just let him walk prior to the March 1 deadline so he could sign with a team that can actually win and go to the playoffs? He deserves an option.
This is a front office who has done that with lots of players. They've done that with Tyson Chandler. They basically got Trevor Ariza to a team he wanted to be with. They let Austin Rivers go and sign with a team he wanted to be with. They've done that. Even Juwan Evans this week, they released Juwan Evans when they knew he had a sniff from the Rockets, and the Rockets might actually play him a little bit. So I think the Suns have done things like that. So that they didn't do it for Troy Daniels is interesting, but I wouldn't necessarily put it on the Suns that they wouldn't do that for Troy. There must be some circumstances under which Troy didn't want that to happen, or they probably would have released. Oh, Wayne Ellington's another example. So you've got half a dozen guys the Suns have been nice enough to allow to go to another team at their convenience, and yet Troy Daniels is still on this team. So I don't think it's because the Suns are holding him hostage.
No, and that's fair, and I think that you're correct. They have done it for others, which makes it perplexing. I mean, maybe Troy Daniels point blank said, "I don't want to do that. I'm not a mercenary. I'm here with these guys, and I want to fulfill my obligation."
You would think he would want to. He'd rather be on a playoff team this year. So I question. I have the same questions you do.
Yeah,
I just don't know why it didn't happen. I just don't think it's that he begged and the Suns said no. That's all.
No, I don't think that's the case either. Maybe his agent put out feelers and realized there wasn't that opportunity, so he might as well stay here and in a place that he's comfortable. I don't know what the real answer is, but from that 50,000-foot view, looking at it, it seems odd. That was the one thing about the Jimmer thing that stood out to me. Great. Jimmer Fredette gets you some buzz the day you sign him, and that's about all you're going to get out of him. And maybe he'll have some crazy scoring game, because there's no doubt this guy can still score.
Yeah, do a prediction. What's his high score in a game in the last 8? Because he did not score. He was 0 for 1 from the field against Sacramento in his debut in 4 minutes.
Yeah, well, what did we see? Alec Peters dropped, 39 in a final game of a season?
It was 30. Yeah, in the 30s. It was in the 30s.
I'm gonna give Jimmer a 25-point game, probably in that one of those last two where nobody gives a crap, and even Devin Booker may go, "Hey, I'm gonna sit out this one because I don't want to play." There's going to be shots for him to be able to take for sure. So I think he's mid-20s.
What are the chances that he rebuilds his career in a way where Steph Curry made himself? Not Steph, Seth.
Okay. Seth. I was just say, are you really trying to compare Jimmer Fredette to Steph Curry?
But Seth Curry came through Phoenix on a 10-day, barely got into any games. Ended up signing with he went through 2 or 3 other teams, then finally found a home in Dallas where they needed somebody to actually score. And now he's got himself a nice career. Now he's back up in Portland, and he's a difference maker for them. Still just offensive, still just all he does is shoot. He doesn't pass well, he doesn't defend well. But he's in a good system, and he can score, and he actually makes the shots when he puts them up, like a Troy Daniels. So what do you think are the chances that Jimmer Fredette creates that kind of role for himself for 2 or 3 more years in the NBA?
Not in 10 games here. It may be like Seth Curry, where he decides, all right, I got back in the league. That taste was enough to keep me from going back to China, and I'll try to hang on with a few teams. It's all about right situation. You got to find the right place with the right system that believes in you enough to give you the minutes to prove it. I mean,
so you really don't think Jimmer will revive his career thanks to these 10 games with the Suns, 8 games?
I don't know. I just don't see it. But who knows? If somehow Devin Booker winds up with a mysterious injury and they shut him down, or something like that happens where the offense becomes just a total free for all, which I won't put it past it. There's a chance
Well,
that
but it's not really
happens.
that hard to actually come in and, you're going to get 3-point attempts out there. Troy Daniels gets them when he gets minutes, assuming Jimmer is going to get minutes. After his first 4 for 8 game from behind the arc, because he has always been a good shooter. Um, how hard do you yeah, I can kind of see people's glimmer of hope rising if Jimmer has a 4 for 8 on threes game in the next 2 or 3, where they're fighting for Jimmer to get tons of minutes. And it is possible with all of his mania and his hype that he actually gets a 2 or 3 year deal from some other team out of this 8 game stretch with the Suns.
Well, the thing is Igor just gonna gift him the minutes? Like, is he gonna, or is he gonna be
Well, you
told
said
he has to
Igor
give him
doesn't
the
give
minutes? Well,
Yeah, okay.
I think he
Let's talk
does.
about that for a sec. Let's talk about that for a sec. So that's been a theme going around different circles within different podcasts, different social media comment sections, stuff like that, where there's been an assumption by a lot of folks that Igor was told to play Jamal Crawford this year, that he wouldn't have otherwise played Jamal Crawford this year under his own volition as a head coach, that he was told by somebody that's not a coach to play Jamal Crawford all these minutes. Well, how likely is it, do you think, that a front office person actually tells the coach and the coach follows through with it like this so consistently over 82 games?
How likely in
That it
the
happened.
NBA
Let's just say it happened.
it,
How likely is it
oh,
that it happened here?
it's much more likely here than other NBA situations. I'll say that much for it. And if you remember the Arnovitz article and a handful of others, they reference times where even Robert Sarver was the guy that would go down and tell
But
people
but most of
and
those were
coaches.
refuted immediately by saying that it hasn't happened for years.
Okay, that it gets refuted by who? People on the payroll, people with a reason to refute it. I mean, if you look at it, it's not hard to connect the dots, right? That report comes out that they haven't even started interviewing candidates, and then the next day it was, you get
We talked to Kevin McHale. Yeah.
local radio hosts start to go, well, they've started putting out feelers in the last few days, and it's like, okay, it's spin. And that's what a lot of this is, it's spin, how you react to a story, and they didn't categorically deny it ever happened either. That's the thing. So if it happened in the past, the chances that it could happen in the future are fairly good as well. So it's more likely that that situation happened here in Phoenix than other places. But I don't. Igor is a guy that looks at it and goes, and I firmly believe this is what's the best situation to help my young guys develop, not just give them minutes and hope they whatever, the hope they grow magically, like I think was the plan with a couple coaches here in the past. But he systematically seems to think about this stuff, and playing Jamal Crawford minutes helped show these young guys, at least in theory, the right way to play out there on the court. So I could see where Igor would think that it was beneficial. And when you look at who he was taking minutes from, and Melton or Akobo, it wasn't like they were lighting it up and he decided, it's time to give this over the hill guy a chance to show that he still can play somewhat. Like it wasn't like he was taking minutes that were earned by
Right.
these other
By
guys.
somebody
So
else.
yeah, so I think it's more likely that he just looked at Jamal Crawford and went, hey, it's a competent NBA player that I can play minutes at point guard that might be able to help my system not look like complete trash because, desperate times call for desperate measures. And he was at a point where he had to prove that his offense even looked like it was capable of being an NBA offense. I mean, if we remember at the end of that 17 game losing streak, there were reports that they were going to fire Igor. So, I mean, I would not put it past him doing whatever it took to prove that his offense could work somewhat.
Well, in my opinion, I just feel like, yeah, Igor had a challenging year, has had a very challenging season. And I just don't think he was given any of the tools necessary to have had a successful season. I don't think he could have done better with this roster. And as soon as he got a couple of playable veterans that actually rounded out a rotation, he was winning games. So while yes, you can question his substitution patterns, you can question his play calling. That actually it's been pretty creative out of timeouts, but other than just general overall play calling and offensive scheme and everything, you can question a lot of things. But I think you can the same questions can be made of every coach. Um, I really think Igor didn't do anything to not come back next year. But what do you think are the chances that that if James Jones stays in charge and they just add what I think is going to happen is they're just going to add some other guy to the front office to appease some critics, but it'll be some other guy who isn't going to disrupt the James Jones, Trevor Buckstein kind of management of the team. What do you think is the likelihood that Igor does not come back?
I think it's 50-50, just simply because even with James Jones, if he comes back and that's the situation, Igor wasn't his guy. From everything I've heard, Igor was, even if he was the third pick of Ryan McDonough, he was still a Ryan McDonough selection, and whoever is named full-time GM is going to want to put their own stamp on this. And if they feel like Igor can't be that guy long term, they have no incentive to double down on what they feel is a bad decision. If the GM that hired him, the front office that hired him, was still in place, then yeah, you double down because you think, okay, we hired this guy, we believe in him, and there was nothing that really showed us he can't do this job. But if you're James Jones or anybody else that comes into the situation, your window is small to prove that you can win. So you're not going to saddle yourself with a coach that you don't necessarily believe in just because it's convenient. So I think it's 50-50 that Igor's back at this point.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I do like the things that he's done with developing the young guys, but I can totally see. Well, tell you what, if the Suns are going to go with an inexperienced head coach who, guys who never really done it before and is going to be paid league minimum, just stay with Igor. If you're going to hire a veteran coach who's worth more than league minimum and you're actually going to pay mid-range on a head coaching salary, then go for it.
What they tried to do that with two guys last year, and both of them basically gave him the finger.
Right.
So
So that's
so why even go down that path? Because you could have every intention to hire that guy. You fire Igor, and then you wind up having to hire a first-time coach
you could
anyways.
quietly talk. Can't you quietly talk to other head coaches and see if they would sign a contract before you actually fire Igor?
I think that's playing with fire and in a way that is dangerous on numerous fronts because it could hurt your reputation even further, even with coaches. So I don't see it. But hey, if they do hire Kevin McHale, he's been known to tamper. He lost draft picks for that and got in trouble for that. So maybe it could. But can let's talk about the names on this list that have come out.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a bit.
Kevin McHale, which is a name, if you remember, I brought up 6-7 weeks ago on this show that I thought was the likely guy that they were going to hire. Not that I wanted it to happen, but that if they were going to be forced to hire somebody with quote unquote NBA front office experience, he was going to be a guy that they looked long and hard at. And then Jim freaking Paxson. First off, I almost had a damn heart attack because the headline read Mikhail Paxson interviewed for Suns job or something to that extent. And I thought, if they're hiring John Paxson, that's it. I am done with this franchise. A man that tortured me for decades, after that 93 finals, you're going to hire him? No, I'm out. But it's his brother, Jim, which, again, the Suns finding a way to bring in the lesser brother of a group in hopes that he helps them win. But Paxson had a terrible record as the Cavs GM, and McHale like I mentioned, at the Joe Smith debacle in Minnesota when he was the president and GM, where they lost first round draft picks, got fined, didn't have a great run in Houston as part of their head coach, and that okay, great. There's experience there, but it almost feels like to me they're just bringing up names so they can go, look, we looked into it and we just feel James Jones is the best.
So Jim Paxton's been coming to every Suns home game as the Phoenix area scout for his brother's team since I believe for the last 10 to 15 years. I've personally been aware of him the last 6 years I've been covering the Suns on site. He's there every game, and he does scout players for his brother's team. But he hasn't done anything else in an NBA front office over that same time. I don't know how much involved he's been in any decision making other than just filing reports. All I see is probably Robert Sarver saw him in the hallway one day and talked to him for 2 seconds, and now he's on the short list of 2 people that have been talked to about a permanent job. So I think that was just a name to pull off. Like if you're looking around to put names on a list, hey, we need a second. Okay, well, let me grab Jim, after the game tonight.
Yeah.
And we'll call him number 2.
Yeah. Well, and Jim is a very nice guy. I've interacted with him around there as well, and saw him a lot while I was covering the team. So nice guy. I don't have anything personally against him other than who he's blood related to. But I think you're 100% right. It's an easy name to claim. Yeah, we discussed it with him. When you're feeding names to whoever your source is or whoever you are a source for in terms of this. So
yeah, the only other guy who comes to almost every game is Todd Quinter, but he got fired by Sarver, so I don't see him being added to the short list either. He's now a scout for, I forget the organization, but he's at almost every Suns home game.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you look at it, it probably is. And I think I brought this up. I'm pretty sure Sarver's had a fascination with McHale for a while now. So
yeah, I'm not really sure where that comes from either.
Neither am I. Originally, I'd assumed it was a McDonough connection to Boston when I had first heard that they were talking about it, but I don't know. I mean, if you look at it from a player perspective, McHale has an amazing pedigree and was in a Celtics organization that was the organization of the 80s and it was around and the 70s for that matter, and was around Red Auerbach. I mean, he has the
well, and he's done a little bit of everything. He's been coach, he's been GM, he's been other different positions in front offices as well. It's just his name has been floated for years in different capacities related to the Suns. So there's some kind of fascination, and it probably doesn't even need to be a longer list than that. He'd probably come in as president of basketball operations, overseeing the James Jones, Trevor Buckstein group. Then at that point, maybe he does bring in a veteran coach to replace Igor.
It'll be interesting to see, because my guess is it's McHale or bust. I don't think there's probably
it's McHale or stay where with the guys they have without any changes.
Yeah, and the McHale talk just covers you when the NBA goes, well, we wanted you to hire somebody experienced, and go, yeah, we pursued Kevin McHale and he turned us down. And was the one guy
everyone else was taken.
Yeah, and that was the guy we were most comfortable with coming in here with the structure we wanted. Whatever the spin is going to be on that. And if I'm Kevin McHale, why do I want that headache? Because okay, I won as a player, I made my money as a coach. Why choose this unless it's ego, which I think a lot of it comes down to that. Everybody thinks that they can be the one to change
the fear of missing out, the spotlight. That of course I think he's definitely would want to come back and do it. The only question is how much control he would want to have over the team.
Yeah, and maybe he's at a point where he doesn't care how much control he has. He just he wants to be back in it.
Which makes it not a nice hiring, not a good hiring.
No.
You need somebody who demands control and gets it.
Yes, and somebody that isn't necessarily with a pre-existing relationship with your ownership. You need to make a hire that's the right hire from a basketball perspective for the long-term vision. You have to
Which
trust
makes it
what this
really
person's
unlikely.
vision is. Yeah, well, you have to trust whoever you hire. You have to trust their long-term vision and empower them to actually make it come to fruition. That's good leadership, is putting people in positions to succeed and build a vision and execute on it. That's what this team needs, is that president of basketball operations, head of front office, that has that vision and is given the tools and the room to make it happen. I don't know that we're going to get there. I don't know how this will play out. I mean, none of us do, but is Kevin McHale the guy? I probably doubt that. Is James Jones the guy? I think we've seen this year
You
that
mean the guy
probably
who's going
not.
to save the franchise?
Yeah, the guy with that vision that's going to demand enough autonomy to make it happen and figure it out. Now, I don't have a problem with ownership having a seat at the table because they pay the checks, right? It's when you get into, you're trying to sidestep that vision that that your front office is
Short
putting in
circuiting.
place.
Yep.
That's the problem, and that's, they need a front office that can establish themselves enough and learn how to work with Robert Sarver in a way that keeps him feeling he's involved, but doesn't predicate on him sidetracking the entire thing and causing issues. And I think that's going to be difficult in the long run. And I don't think Kevin McHale is likely the guy to do it. But I think if anybody's going to get the chance, it's going to be him.
All right, one last topic before we go for the week. What do you think of the report that came out this week that Robert Sarver lined the campaign pockets of the council people who voted for the arena deal?
Welcome to adulthood and politics and the way any
Right.
of this works. Who's sitting there going, "Oh my God, I am so shocked that if a politician votes for something that somebody in a position of power wants, that somehow it benefits the politician in the long run and the people that the politician represents." That's politics. That's the way the system is set up to work. So it does not shock me. It does not bother me. Now, if we had found out that somebody with the Suns wrote a $2 million check personally to a representative that they personally benefited from, fine, that's a step beyond the way the system works. But donating money and pledging money to things in a person's district is the way that we've set up our political system. Robert Sarver and the Suns, as much as it pains me sometimes to say this, just played the game.
They played the game everybody else has set up.
Yeah.
The only thing that bothered me is seeing that $3 million price tag. I just simply went, that's more than he spent on a coach in an NBA season in the last 8 years.
Yeah, the economics of it bothered me because yeah, what kind of point guard could you have gotten for $3 million?
Right.
You know, like,
can you just invest that in your team and
like,
not in your arena deal? Yeah, that would have been nice.
Like, that in no way shocks me. And guess what? Political contributions, I'm sure you can find a way to write off, where you can't write off paying a head coach more or a or a point guard. So there's a tax implication there as well. I mean, yeah, politics is dirty. The business of getting big arenas funded by taxpayers is a dirty thing, but there's nothing illegal about what happened, and it happens all over.
It's nothing abnormal either, right?
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just the way it is.
And let's be honest, if it was an owner that people liked, they would have been like, "Wow, that's a really smart way to get this deal done." You know, it's all about perspective, and as much as us, other podcasts, media, rip Robert Sarver, that perspective is a big part of it, and the fact that they've never been able to shift that perspective when it comes to him is why we look at stories like this and it becomes a big deal, because there's a perception of who he is, what he stands for, and stories can get skewed to feed that perception. This is just one of those. I mean, Yeah, of course, if you want something done, you're going to donate money to politicians who are going to get it done for you and put money into the districts that they represent. I mean, or sections of the city that they represent. That it's not a shock to me in any way. And anybody acting like it's some massive conspiracy or bad deal, sorry, it's just not. Now there's probably some shady things that were done as well, but did it cross the line? Probably not. And that's just the reality of it.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we covered all the big topics for the Suns this past week. This has been the Solar Panel, and we'll be back next week, and hopefully we'll talk about a handful of wins, right?
And who needs Tim? We could do this without him,
We
right?
can do this without Tim. Yeah. And for all those listening who missed Tim and missed the way he runs the show, yeah, he'll be back. He'll be back soon, and we'll be back on track.
We miss him as well. All right.
Yes. All right. Bye.
Later, Dave. Thanks, man.